My name is Karen Carlucci, and I am based in New York and New Jersey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Herstory TV and the Herstory podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand, and I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman coming to us all the way from the United States. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our platform. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction and for having me. My name is Karen Carlucci, and I am based in New York and New Jersey. And I am a licensed therapist and certified professional coach. I'm 48 years old, and I've had my own journey, as we all have in this life. And personally, I was very deeply affected by something that was a collective shared tragic event, and that is September 11th. And in my case, I'm one of many stories, of course. I lost my fiance at the time, and that left me in a place of utter confusion, unexpected turmoil, emotional upheaval, and also professional disruption. I really got off track. And my story is really about how to find something within us that can move us forward without feeling like we are abandoning the past and somehow integrating loss with growth. So, as a therapist, I pull from my own education and training and experience. And for the first time many years ago, I had to somehow make sense of something beyond my comprehension and find a way to help myself. And I needed help. That was the reality. And it took some time, but I moved through it. And at this point, the last several years, I've really been focusing on reaching out to others, women in particular, who are suddenly finding themselves perhaps in a sudden, unexpected loss of sorts that they're wondering, how am I supposed to move on? Where will I land? Is my life going to ever be good again? And the answer that I can say is it can, yes, be good again. It just won't be the same, but we are still very much who we were before, and we're becoming something more. So that's my message.
Wow. Yeah, 9/11 was felt all over the world. It was one of the world's worst disasters, really. I can't even begin to imagine, where you were at that time. Now, this is a few years on, and looking back, talked about talking to someone in the future who can guide you. If you were to go back to the younger you, that young woman who was in that position, totally devastated. I know that a lot of people now are in a similar situation. The COVID pandemic has hit every single corner of the globe, and we are all feeling it. I lost my mother-in-law on the 29th of March last year in Poland. 3 weeks later, my mother died in Zimbabwe. So both my husband and I have not managed to go back home to bury our mothers.
Oh.
So 2020 was a difficult year.
Yes. Yes.
Give us some advice. 3 steps, 3 things that one can do to make sense of all of this.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Gertrude, for those losses. It is something that there isn't a quick fix or a step-by-step answer in lifting the pain of loss. It demands time. It really requires that we feel it and let it wash over us. But that is frightening. That is not an easy thing for us to allow to happen. You had asked, what might I offer my younger self, which is really someone in the present who is experiencing loss and unresolved loss. I think that is really what adds to the complexity of it, where you can't actually influence the circumstances. And yes, you made a very nice parallel that with COVID 19 and all that the pandemic has placed upon us globally, as well as individually, that has really brought forward this sense of powerlessness. And we don't do well with that. So, what I would say to my younger self or to you or anyone who's relating in this struggle is that time will deliver some ease. And you do have the tools to work through it, but also to accept. So accepting is hard. It feels like we're not doing anything. So I know back then my instinct was to take action. I felt like, well, I have to do something. And once I let go of that impulse of thinking that I was going to be able to find him, for instance, which when you think about it, if you really, wrap the head around what happened that day, there was no finding him. There was no finding him. So to really like have to accept, okay, there isn't something I can do, but I can take care of myself in very small ways and let other people also take care of me and be there for me. And it's easy to say, but it takes, I think, some self compassion, patience, and tolerance that if we practice it ahead of time, when and if we do confront these really tough, painful experiences, we will be more equipped.
Yeah, sometimes when you hear situations like this, the most frustrating thing for people to be able to help family, friends, relatives is not having the right words to say.
Yeah.
But what do you say to someone like you who had gone through that experience? I'm constantly asking myself this because I've got friends all over the world and people are being affected in so many different ways. And I sometimes feel I don't have the right words to say to comfort them. Can you shine a bit of light on that?
Sure. And that is something we all relate to. Sometimes there are no words. And I find myself struggling, and I'm trained in such work. And I have to catch myself and just say, oh gosh, I don't have to find the perfect sentence. I can just be present if I'm physically with that person. Perhaps, if it's a certain relationship, touch their hand or give them a hug that they can just know I'm present with them in that physical moment. But in other ways, with verbal communication, we can say, I'm struggling to find the words, but I'm here for you. I think that's authentic.
It really is, because sometimes we try and fill the silence with words that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
And it becomes counterproductive to the person who's grieving, right?
It can feel, yes,
Mm.
it can feel that way. Yes.
Wow. So now if I can take you into your future, I know that you have managed to rebuild your life. Tell us a little bit about what has happened since.
Well, it was a long road. We're rebuilding even when we think we're not. Like literally, the minutes, hours, and days and weeks after September 11th, 2001, I might have felt frozen in time and as if everything stopped. But I was evolving in those moments. I was growing. I was developing into who I am in this moment. And that is something that happens every minute that we're present. We are becoming the next version of ourselves. And that's a pretty cool thing to realize. So I simply was letting myself flail around for a while. Took my time getting back to work. I was young enough where I was in a position to have some help from family as I got reset in figuring out where I was going to live and what I could handle with responsibility and how I wanted to spend my time, and taking some classes that made me feel that I could work through this process, such as, writing and other forms of expression was really good tools for me. And connecting with other women, I reached out to all types of significant others who lost someone that day, who were not actually married and were in this in between place, because that was unique. And I found myself being proactive and reaching out to connect. And that's how I got through it. And then after, I call it my decade of dating when it comes to that department, I literally was just not finding my way to another life partner. Some women found someone more readily and they were ready to go and they started a family within a few years. And I just didn't find that in the way that we might have thought it would go once upon a time. So that's an example of how my path did dramatically change. I'm aware of that, but I let it be what it was. I trusted that I was moving through this journey in the way that it needed to be. And then I eventually found my way after or around 40 years old uh, in a relationship that did seem like it could stick and move into the future. And at 42, I got married. And it sometimes is a funny thing. I'll say, oh, I got married a second time, but I never got married the first time. It just felt like I was. It's a very bizarre experience, I have to say. It's like living in two different dimensions or universes. But that's the thing. They do come together, and you can almost have both in a strange way. So I was fortunate that my life with my current husband has really just been able to accept my past. And I'm fortunate that I have a connection with my fiance who of course was lost, with his family. And that brings us all together. So it's really, I think, an example of allowing it all to be part of your story.
That's awesome, because a lot of times people try and push the past away.
Yes.
And it's okay to have both. This is
Yes.
someone you loved. This is someone who was such a big part of your life. And
Mm-hmm.
whoever new is coming into your life should be accepting of that. So I'm really glad that you found that balance, because sometimes it's not that easy, because people are trying to
No.
tell you to forget about the past, move on. But the past is still there, and it can still exist in a very balanced way, honoring and respecting those who have gone. So that's really beautiful to hear. I'm really glad that you found that. So let's just move forward now. I have learned that every day counts. You know, I have videos and pictures of the last time I was with my mother. I was fortunate. I went back to Africa. She was very ill at the time. I spent 4 months with her. And in those 4 months, it was almost as if I knew I was never going to see her again. Whenever she could walk down to the gate, I took pictures, I took videos. I was just looking back the other day, working on a book that I'm writing about my parents, because I lost my parents less than 2 years apart as well.
Wow.
And I took 3,000 photographs of my mother. I
Mm.
have like 250 short little videos of days when she was well and talking. And I keep saying to everybody that every minute counts when you're with your loved ones. You know, hug them like that's the last time you will put your arms around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think COVID has given us that gift, right? That gift of perspective, that
Mm.
this life is so fleeting. And we
Mm-hmm.
think we've got control. We think we know what's
Mm.
coming. We don't. In a heartbeat, your whole life can change. And you're one of those people who experience that.
Yeah, yeah. And it is what you're describing so well is a profound realization. It's sobering. And when you go through it, it's disorienting. But to know it, and the sooner we learn it, and to me, this is part of teaching children about resilience. It's all in that category of like the sooner we learn that we can influence a lot, we can control certain things, but yet there is just one moment that's real, and that's the moment that we have right now. And then it's gone, and then there's the next one and the next one. And that's why I was saying we're not the same person moment to moment, because it's constantly shifting and moving. So to just realize that, and yes, this experience with the global pandemic has opened our eyes. And even with this realization, I think it's important to acknowledge that there is no way we could ever truly be 100% aware and prepared for the time when someone will leave us. It's just, it's almost like we can get close to preparing and appreciating and realizing that this is fleeting, but to also accept once again that when it does occur, however it goes, we're still going to feel like we were hit with a bulldozer.
Nothing quite prepares you for death. You're so right. You're so right. Karen, I do not have the words to thank you for coming online and sharing your story with us today. To everybody out there who's listening, please just remember that this life is fleeting. Our days are numbered. You don't know when that day is coming. So if you have a husband, if you have a wife, when they walk out the door to go to work, hug them like it's the last time you will meet them, because you never know. Put your family first, your community next. Let's all just remember that this crisis we're in globally is a shared experience. There isn't a single human being on the planet who hasn't been affected. So do pay attention to the people around you who are needing support as well. And for those of you who are grieving, I think this has been a brilliant example of resilience. You've given us so many tips on ways to cope. I have been journaling. I write letters to my parents. When I miss them, I just pull out my pen and paper, and I've written some of the most beautiful letters, words that I would have wanted to have said and didn't get a chance to do that. And it gives me relief because I get all of those emotions out of my system and on paper. Yeah. So thank you, Karen.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, I will be back again tomorrow with yet another fascinating story. Thank you so much for tuning in. The Herstory Circle is going to be having an amazing summit, 14th to the 23rd of May. I'm hoping Karen will be there to present again and connect with our community. But have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Go onto our website for more information, theherstorycircle.com. Bye for now, and thank you again, Karen.